Today we're going to talk about physical testing of pickups. We put them through a very long build process. There's a lot of unique things that we do with the magnets and also with the winding, a hybrid approach of hand wrapping and hand-fed machine winding. But we also try to go the extra mile when it comes to testing. And the physical testing, most people will just hook them up to a multimeter and see if they work and ship them out. And that doesn't really tell you how they sound, and that doesn't tell you how they're going to stand up to the rigors of a touring musician or just someone that might leave the guitar in their trunk during the winter or during the summer. So we do two things. We sound test everything through a variety of amps and modelers and even directly into computers, but we also do some pretty in-depth physical testing beyond just an ohm meter and testing the magnets here. Well, the reason why we do it is the physical testing that we run these pickups through give us the peace of mind that they're going to work for a very long time. What we try to do is mimic the temperature changes that these pickups are going to go through in their lifetime. The copper wire in these pickups will expand and retract. The physical testing we put them through, we cool them, we heat them, and then we test them to make sure that they can handle expanding and retracting with the temperature changes. We just don't know what's going to happen to them when they're out in the world. We want them to work now, and we want them to work 20 years from now. I bet you didn't think you'd see in a pickup making shop. This is an old toaster oven. Actually gets down to a minimum heat here, about 125, which that can mimic what it's like in Scottsdale, Arizona, in a trunk or in an attic. So this is what we use to mimic that. It's going to make the copper in the pickup expand, and then after we take it out and cool off, it's going to then retract. When the coil expands and when it retracts, it gives opportunity for any kinks or any imperfections in the wire to snap, to break. We want that to happen now as opposed to later. So if we can catch that issue before we send the pickup out to someone, we want it to happen on our watch and not on your watch. So we go through and we put them in here. Anyway, we just, nothing fancy here. We just, sit them in there. Put them in like that and close them up, and then we come back, pull them out, test them, and watch the meter as it kind of runs down until it gets to room temperature. Sometimes we can catch things where there's spikes or drops where the reading will fluctuate in a way that looks not natural, and we throw those in the bucket. If it acts in a way that it shouldn't, we don't take a chance with that. We're going to put our name on it. We want to make sure it works great, not only when you get it, but after you've had it for a few years and put it through a lot of temperature changes, especially if you're a traveling musician. You're going to be all over the world in airplanes, airports, hot airports, cold airports. It adds up, so we want to make sure we catch it early on. It's a little hot still. We just pulled out of the oven, and as you can see, the temperature has been climbing a little bit still, because you can tell by the reading on the ohm meter is going up there. That's because the copper wire is expanded, and I assume there's still some heat radiating in from the back plate here. I don't want to touch it, it's kind of hot. But in a little bit it'll start to cool, and we monitor the ohm reading as it cools. This is a good way to make that copper expand and to make it retract when we freeze it and then expand when we heat it. It's a good way to identify any shorts, and we'll check back when it starts to decline a little bit, and you can see that. So it's finally started to stabilize a little bit and cool down a little bit. It's backing off a little bit, but we like to monitor it even during these times of cooling. You can tell it's cooling because the number is slowly going down on the multimeter. The copper is cooling off and retracting a little bit. Sometimes some weird things happen to the reading here. Either if we take it out of the freezer and it warms back up to room temperature, or the opposite when we take it out of the oven and it cools back down to room temperature. Sometimes there's some jumps, some big spikes to the reading, and when that happens, it's rare. When that happens, there's certainly something wrong or some imperfection in the wire. We could have kinked it along the way. We do kick them out if that happens. We don't want there to be any issue. This is important to show because these pickups just got done with the final testing, and they didn't all make it. They made it through the cold test, but through the hot test, one of them failed. That one gives you a reading. This one gives you a reading. There's no reading. We caught that through our rigorous testing. Now, this is a well-made pickup. I mean, we took our time, and it looks great. It would have sounded great if it would actually have passed the physical test that we put it through. Something went wrong in here. You know, maybe there was a kink when we were doing some of the hand wrapping, and it got exposed when we put it through the physical tests. Because of that, this is a good thing. Because this thing failed while in our custody, going through the heat changes and the cold changes, we know that this would have probably eventually failed down the road on someone, a year down the road, 2 years down the road, and now they don't have to go through that. This pickup is done. I think we were at the end of our spool, so we're not going to even be able to use these other pickups here because we don't mix wires from different batches in one set. It's not a variable we like to change within a set of pickups. So unfortunately, all the time that went into making this, which was substantial, is kind of out the window, but it was going to be that way anyway. Obviously, I made a mistake while I was winding this one, and I'm glad that it died in my hands and not somebody else's. But we never would have caught it if it wasn't for the hot and cold test that we do, and that's why I'm so proud to do it, even though we almost never catch anything. When we catch something, we know we saved someone a lot of grief, but we also saved ourselves a bad name. You know, you'll rarely hear about any of our pickups failing out there. DOAs are almost non-existent. Now, we're not perfect and things do slip through the cracks, but I'd put our record up against anyone because we put the extra time in to test them to make sure they're going to work.